Today I will be teaching you about framing up a house wall. This process may seem very difficult to you for hearing it the first time, but in all actuality, it is very simple if you follow these steps that I learned from my uncle Gary Clement, owner of Clement Construction, back 3 years ago when I first started working for him during the summer. Building a good, strong, sturdy wall is very important, just as important as being safe while doing it. You need to be safe because otherwise you can get in trouble by OSHA, which is someone who comes around and makes sure construction sites are safe. Also, it is very important to get your correct lengths and heights of the wall off of your blueprints, which are a main thing in the process. Now, tools that you will need to start this. You will need nails and a nail gun, which are for nailing your wall together. And you will need some gloves, because normally your hands will start getting raw and start hurting later on in the day. You will also need probably a 6-foot step ladder to stand up the wall once you have it complete. You will also need a skill saw for cutting your 2x4s, 6s, or 8s. You also need your 2x4s, 6s, or 8s, just depending on how sturdy the wall needs to be and how tall it needs to be. You will also need your tape measure for measuring, a carpenter pencil for marking, a framing square for doing your layout, and you will need your blueprints, of course. Now, once you have everything gathered around, you will then read off your blueprints, your correct lengths and heights. Sometimes you, though, might need to put a window or a door in your wall, so this will call for building headers for a window or a door. First, you will read how long the door, how wide it is, and you will get 2x12s, and you will cut 2 of them to the correct length. You also will need a little skinny piece of plywood to nail together for your 2x12s, because they don't just go flat back to back, so you have to stuff them with insulation before you put the wall up. Now, once you have built any window headers or door headers necessary, you will then check and see how many 2x4 studs you will need. 2x4s is the main stud that is used, but also 2x6s and 8s are used, as I said earlier. And when you build your windows and doors, you also need a door jack or a window jack to hold up your header, which goes on the side of your header. It goes on the side of your header. Now, I learned from Paul Pins, who worked at Clement Construction since the year 2000, that when you're putting your jacks and your window header together, it is easier to put them together first before nailing it to your top and bottom plate. Once you have those complete, then you will want to make your top and bottom plate, which I just said before. Your top and bottom plate, you will get your correct length off of your blueprints. It will also be either 2x4, 2x6, or 2x8, just depending what you are also using for the walls. It'll be the same as the studs used for the walls. Now, once you have those cut, you'll want to lay them and make sure they're flush from end to end so you can do your layout. Your studs will be 16 inches apart, and once you draw those all out, you will also take your framing square then, and you will trace it straight down, and that will be the same width as what your 2x4s, 6s, or 8s will be, and that will let you know where to nail each one together correctly. Once you have the layout done, you will then begin to cut your studs into the correct length, which you will get off of your blueprints. Once those studs are all measured out from the length, it is then when you want to cut them. You don't want to measure one and cut, because that will just take away time, and that'll just be no good. So once you measure them all, then cut them all, so it'll save time. Once you're done, then you'll carry all the pieces you'll need for the wall over to the area where you'll be building it, because you want to build it in a very close area to where you'll be setting it up, because sometimes when you get those bigger walls with your 2x6s and 2x8s, they're very heavy and you really don't want to be carrying them very far to put in place. Now, once you have everything put in place and you're beginning to start nailing them together, you'll take your stud and you'll push it to the top plate, which I like to start with first, which I learned from my uncle, owner of Clement Construction in Dubuque, Iowa. Start with the top plate first, because once you get those all nailed into the bottom, or into the top plate, excuse me. Once you nail them incorrectly, it is then easier to move your gun over to the bottom plate to stand up, and your gun will be right there ready to stand it up. But now, once you have your 2x4 studs correctly nailed into your top plate, you'll want to make sure you only put 3 shots of your nails into the stud if it's a 2x4, because if you put any more in that, it will more than likely start splitting, and if it starts splitting, the wall will become weak, or the nails might not hold, and it's just not good for it at all. But you can put 4 shots of a nail in it if you have a 2x6 or a 2x8, because they are thicker and longer, so they'll be able to take more shots of nails in them without splitting. Now, once you have nailed in the top plates correctly, following your layout, you will then go over to the bottom and you will follow the correct layout, doing the same exact thing, nailing them in. Once you have that completed, you will then stand up your wall. Usually this takes about 3 guys, sometimes 4, sometimes even 2, just depending how long your wall is or whatever it calls for. Once you have it stood up, you want to make sure someone's still holding on to it, because then you will take your nail gun and you will nail usually 3 shots into your bottom plate straight into the subfloor, every other stud, to help stabilize it while it's standing. Now that's not the only thing you need to do to make sure it's stable. You will then need to take usually a 2x4 12-foot or a 16-foot stud, and you will nail that to the side of it. You also want to nail that into the subfloor so it will brace the wall and keep it standing up, and it won't move or fall over on you or break in some strong winds or just anything. Now you may think, well, how come you need the braces? What happens to them once the house is done? How come there's no braces in my house? Well, once you have the braces all completed and everything, keeping your wall up sturdy, it is then where you'll be putting your roof on. And once you start putting your roof on, all your walls will be tied together from your roof, nailing together, and that weight from the roof will keep your wall weighted down and it won't move anywhere or shift anywhere. Once the wall is completely stood up like that, it is time to go around and make sure everything's flush. Flush means that your wall is standing completely straight up. And I learned from Paul Pins, again, worker at Climate Construction from year 2000, that if you're within an 1/8 inch with your flush, you are normally good. But if you get any bigger than that, you need to check, and something is off drastically. Now, once everything is flush, that is when your wall will be completed and everything will be done well. Now, today we learned how to correctly frame up a wall and set it up. And if you follow these steps correctly, you will normally have a pretty good solid wall. And remember, if you can't build it safely, it's not worth building it at all.